thank you so much for joining us here at Spotlight. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do and the PMDD Project.
Yeah, so I'm Phoebe. I am the founder of the PMDD Project, which is the UK's first and currently only charity to support people impacted by PMDD. Our mission is to support people directly and indirectly impacted. So as well as people who are directly impacted like myself, I've got PMDD. PMDD also impacts people like our loved ones, our friends, business leaders who need to understand how to support their workplace, as well as healthcare professionals who need to recognise PMDD as a chronic condition and as the serious condition that it is. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's who we are, and we are trying to achieve our mission in three ways, mainly three pillars. First one being raising awareness, the second one being providing support, and the third one is funding research and working with researchers to create breakthroughs in a condition that's been overlooked for far too long.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm so sorry to hear that you're also struggling with PMDD. I know how debilitating from personal experience PMDD can be. So it's tremendously courageous of you to take action and to found this amazing charity like you did. So was there like a spark, like a moment where you were like, okay, it's enough. I need to do something about this?
Yeah, I'd say so. So initially, I actually started the PMDD Project just as kind of a support platform on Instagram. And I did that because for years and years, I've had PMDD. I'd say probably about 10 years. It's hard to tell when, for most of those years, I didn't know what PMDD was. But yeah, for years and years, I've kind of been left in the dark, feeling really alone, really isolated by my symptoms and what I now know is my condition. And the reason for that is because a lot of my friends experienced periods and yet they weren't debilitated by it month in, month out. And I think that was what sort of, I knew something wasn't right. And so, yeah, for years, just felt a little bit isolated from it and just quite scared of the symptoms that I was experiencing each month. Everyone experiences PMDD differently, but I was experiencing, and this is quite common as well, the suicidal ideation, which is the extreme version of PMDD, and depression, anxiety, and it was impacting my job, it was impacting my relationships. And when I discovered what PMDD was, it was like, I always say it's like a light bulb moment for me, because I came across just a blog article that someone was writing about their own experience, and I read about their experience of PMDD and I just resonated with it so much. And it was just this moment of validation that that's what I've got. Oh, so it is a thing. There is something that I can put a name towards the symptoms that I'm experiencing every single month. So that feeling stuck with me. I decided to create the Instagram page initially just to raise awareness of PMDD. And I suppose in some ways it was also a way to share what I was going through without having to directly tell my friends what I was going through so that they could better understand me. And then from that, I realised the gaps in awareness, the need for a charity, that the research that was out there and the resources that were out there were massively science heavy and a little bit alienating and not the most accessible. I'm not a medical expert, and I was kind of freaked out often by Googling PMDD. And so I wanted to create a safe space where people can just turn to and yeah, just have their hand held virtually when they're going through it. I suppose we're still uncovering many gaps in awareness and support, particularly in the UK. And that's why we've got such a lot to do, but why it's so important for us to have founded to begin with.
Wow. It's a really inspiring story. Thank you so much for sharing it. Well, like you mentioned, PMDD is actually still largely invisible, especially in the public kind of discourse. In your experience, what's the biggest misconception people have about it?
I think the biggest misconception probably is that PMDD is just bad PMS, so bad premenstrual syndrome. I think people, and honestly some healthcare professionals as well, still think it's just moodiness, it's just that time of the month, it's just an overreaction, rather than it actually being a hormone-related chronic disorder that can be completely debilitating and can actually be classed as a disability. And I think that misunderstanding is so dangerous because it leads to minimization. It leads to delayed diagnosis, which recent studies have shown that on average it's about 12 years to receive a correct diagnosis. So that definitely plays into it, and just leads to the wrong kinds of support or treatment. And yeah, like I said, I suppose it affects relationships, it affects careers, it affects mental health, and it can be debilitating to the point where people are taking their lives. So it shouldn't just be recognised as just that time of the month and they're just being a bit moody. It's a serious condition that needs to be taken seriously.
Yeah, you're very right about that indeed. And as you mentioned, one of your PMDD project's core goals is getting it into the UK medical curriculum and also getting researchers to focus on it more. What kinds of obstacles have you encountered in trying to make this happen? And what progress, on the other hand, are you most proud of so far?
I'd say one of the main points of resistance is that PMDD, it's not widely acknowledged as a priority within medical education from the beginning. And I think that's where it needs to begin. In order for us to get the right support, GPs shouldn't be to blame. You only know what you know, and if they're not taught about it, then how can they be expected to know every single condition? And there are so many. But because it's not a priority within medical education, and because it's not part of the curriculum in medical school, that really causes a lot of friction, and it's massively under-researched. It's more often than not misdiagnosed. I think there's just a lack of urgency to it, despite the fact that it impacts roughly 1 in 20 individuals. I'd say probably more than that, just due to lack of awareness. But despite that, it's still not an urgent matter. And I think the curriculum is already massively overloaded. Like I said, there are so many conditions out there. So adding anything new to that requires serious advocacy and evidence as well. So there's a long way to go. But I think what I'm really proud of is we're starting to shift the conversation, and you've got to start from somewhere. We've begun engaging with clinicians and educators who do recognise there's a gap and they want to work with us. And we're building trust as well in creating accessible, evidence-based resources that are being shared amongst healthcare professionals. And that's a great start. It might be early days, but I think every conversation that we do start, every workshop or training session, or every conversation we have and that we contribute to, is a tiny step towards a massive systematic change. So I think the fact that people are asking us for guidance is a huge milestone in itself.
Oh, really great. You can be really proud of the progress you've made so far, for sure. And with the PMDD project, you've created a space where people can feel seen and supported and validated. What kind of role do you think peer support and community play in managing PMDD? I mean, you've touched upon how it has helped you, but can you expand a bit more on that?
I think with women's health conditions as a whole, I think we're really far behind in terms of getting the awareness and the support that we deserve. And I think that's because women's health conditions, menstrual health issues have always been a really taboo subject that we don't feel able to talk about. And it is an awkward conversation for many. And it just shouldn't be. Experiencing a period is a natural and really lucky thing to experience. And conditions come with that as well. And I think us talking about that shouldn't be scary. And I think by creating a community or adding to a community where people feel empowered to talk about their conditions that they shouldn't be ashamed of, it means that more people are coming together, talking about something important, but then actually being heard. Because I think the more people that are behind you and rallying you, the more they're going to have to listen to what we're saying, and they're going to have to take it seriously. So I think community is a huge thing. But in the same breath, I think also just having someone to turn to as well in your time of need, and when you're feeling desperate and when you feel like nobody understands. Because for so long, I think people have felt misunderstood, and they still continue to feel misunderstood. There's only so much understanding there can be if you don't experience those symptoms yourself. So I think being able to tap into a community of like-minded people who get it is just one of the most rewarding and empowering feelings. It's so important, I think.
Great, thanks. The PMDD project is, as you mentioned, also about driving policy change, right? And if you could rewrite UK policy tomorrow, I mean, that would be amazing. What's the one change you'd make first for people living with PMDD?
If I could rewrite UK policy tomorrow, well, the first thing I would do, I think, is make PMDD recognised and training mandatory across the healthcare system, I suppose, starting with GPs and frontline clinical education. As I've said, too many people are misdiagnosed or dismissed, and it actually just takes years just to get the right name for what you're experiencing. And that kind of delay can be life-altering. When month in, month out, people are experiencing suicidal ideation, we don't have time to wait. So I think if we embed PMDD into both medical training and ongoing professional development, we can, I think, dramatically shorten the path to diagnosis and just the improvement of care from the very first appointment. But then I think beyond healthcare as well, whilst that's so important, I'd also push for PMDD to be recognised as a serious condition in workplaces. This is something I'm really passionate about because PMDD has always impacted my ability to work. The PMDD Project are currently working on creating a recognised PMDD specific business scheme/policy, just to help employers understand how it can impact performance and well-being, how to support their staff with it, and likewise to help employees know that they shouldn't be penalised for a condition they didn't ask for, and there is support out there. They just need to know where to find that support. So I think recognition is the first step in making change, and once it's seen as important at a policy level, support structures can follow across every part of society.
And that's a really good one. I spoke to several other experts, and a few of them also mentioned the fact that it even goes further than PMDD, that if you even raise awareness of how much impact the menstrual cycle can have on so many different biological processes like sleep or nutrition or other mental health issues, then that would already change a lot of things. Like if you got GPs to, for example, even think of asking like, oh, is this maybe related to your menstrual cycle? That can already take you much further than we are at the moment. So some steps to be taken, but it seems so simple, doesn't it?
It does, but there are so many sort of barriers in place. And I think because, like you just mentioned, there is sleep, there is nutrition, there's so many aspects. PMDD, like other conditions, is so complex. So it's just knowing where to start and ensuring that everyone's needs are being met. Yeah, so it's a lengthy process.
Definitely. Yeah, I saw something coming by about the Self-Love Club. Can you tell us a little bit more about that initiative?
Yeah, so Self-Love Club, we launched last year in Manchester. It was a fundraising/awareness campaign. And the point of Self-Love Club is to bring people together. We're really passionate about creating a community, and Self-Love Club is part of that. Bringing people together and allowing them to tap into their inner creativity. For me personally, and for many people within the PMDD community, being able to express my creativity and maybe tap into what makes me feel safe and comfortable and calm, whether that be yoga, Pilates, art, spoken poetry. There's so many different types of ways in which we can maybe express our feelings and emotions and calm ourselves. And I think that's quite a beautiful thing. I think something that should be recognised and celebrated. So Self-Love Club was all about that, really, just bringing people together and allowing them to be their unique selves and enjoy the benefits of art and creativity and the power that that can have on your own well-being.
Really nice. It's so beautiful. I love it. What has surprised you most since launching the PMDD project? Like, what kind of reactions have you gotten? And even has it matched your expectations going into it?
Yeah, I'd say what surprised me most is probably how many people are still reaching out saying, oh, wait, that's what I've got. I think even now with massively growing awareness, there are still so many people that have never heard of PMDD until they stumble across our page or they stumble across a blog piece or they see something on the television and suddenly everything just clicks. I think that just tells me how far we've got to go in getting PMDD recognised, but also how vital our work is, because I dread to think how many people are out there living with this condition in the dark, experiencing this month in, month out, and it can be 2 weeks of the month that they're experiencing this and not knowing what it is, so therefore not getting the help that they deserve. So I think that's been a huge surprise that people are still starting to hear of it for the first time. But I also didn't really expect the depth of connection within the community as well. I kind of thought yeah, we'd be raising awareness, and we are, but it's also become more of a support system, I think. I think people who have felt alone for years are finding words for their experience and realizing that they're not broken, that it's not their fault. What they have is real, it's just undiagnosed. And that shift is huge, I say. And yeah, I've been surprised by how much it's changed me as well, to be honest. It's not always easy, but seeing the impact and having somebody reach out and say, you've helped me to get a diagnosis, or just I feel heard, is everything. It's just reminded me kind of why we started and why we keep going.
Okay, so that's kind of related to my next question, because founding a charity like this is, of course, a huge undertaking, like both emotionally and logistically. And what keeps you going on those days where you're like, well, nothing's ever going to change and it's just too much?
Yeah, so probably linking back to the last answer, I think it's the community. I think on the hardest days, and it can be really hard, one, having PMDD and running this, but also when the system does feel really slow and it's exhausting and it's overwhelming, I think is the key thing. Like we mentioned before, there's so many things we want to do and there's so many needs that need to be met, and it's just finding the time and ensuring that we're covering all bases. So I think what keeps me going from that is just the messages from people saying, I feel seen, or I used your resources at the GP appointment and it's got me to the next step. Those moments are everything. I think they remind me that even if big changes take a while, we're already making a real difference in people's lives right now. And I think I set up the PMDD project initially as I said to myself, if I can help one person, then I'm happy. We've got to take it step by step. And I suppose it also helps to sort of zoom out as well and remember why I started it in the first place. Like, I know what it's like to live with PMDD, to not have the answers, to feel in the dark with it, and to feel like you're falling apart once a month and that no one understands and you're broken. And I don't want anyone to ever feel that way. So that purpose, yeah, keeps the fire lit, I suppose.
Oh, that's really lovely. And in terms of your PMDD, how has that changed for you since launching the PMDD project? Are you finding it easier to manage nowadays?
Yeah, I'd say there's battles. It definitely depends on any external factors, I think, because I have a full-time job alongside this as well, and life can life sometimes. And I think some things can get in the way, and that can definitely intensify my symptoms. But I think since starting the PMDD project, or since hearing about PMDD full stop, I've really been able to look into myself and how PMDD impacts me. And from that, been able to really nurture my body and my needs. You know, it's a trial and error thing. There is no cure. And like I said, there's definitely months that are harder than others. But I've learned to be kind to myself, slow with myself. I've learned maybe what triggers me, what I shouldn't be putting in my body, and what's going to make me feel good or help reduce the symptoms as much as possible. So I think, yes, since starting this, I've definitely recognised my condition. I think even if I didn't have PMDD, having this level of awareness of my menstrual cycle and just what works for me and what makes me feel good within is like really important. And I'd recommend anyone do it that doesn't have PMDD. Yeah.
Nice. And concretely speaking, like you talked a lot about expressing your creativity. Is that one of your coping strategies when you're struggling with PMDD symptoms as well?
Yeah, definitely. I always think that tapping into sort of physical health is really, really important. And there's a massive link between that and your mental health. I think one thing that I've really learned since understanding PMDD more and doing research into it is to not be so hard on myself on the weeks that I'm feeling so fatigued and debilitated by PMDD, to not overexert myself and just be kind and slow and practice yoga. I've just started doing that, and I can really reap the benefits because I'm not overexerting my body and exhausting myself and putting it into crazy mode. And just knowing when to say no to things. And yeah, I think definitely the creativity as well. Just giving myself time to read or do things that make me happy. And yeah, there's so many different ways that if I'm feeling a bit lost and a bit rubbish, I just know that I've got a list of things that I really enjoy doing and that make me happy and center me back to who I am and what I'm here for. And so tapping into that makes a big difference, definitely.
Great. And you said before you've set up the PMDD project as a way to tell your loved ones about PMDD without having to tell them directly. I mean, probably our listeners or watchers will not be able to set up a charity in order to tell their loved ones about their PMDD. How would you advise approaching that conversation?
So I think it's always a tricky conversation to have. And I think the reason for that is because, I mean, there's many different reasons, and touching on the taboo subject of menstrual health, as I mentioned before. But I think in two ways. So when you're in the luteal phase, which is the phase when you experience the PMDD symptoms, it's really hard to express how you're feeling for some people. Some people find it really difficult to navigate that conversation because they feel so overwhelmed. They have no energy to have that kind of conversation in the first place. It's in so many ways really difficult to express how you're feeling. And there's a lot of shame with PMDD, which there shouldn't be, but there is. But then when you're out of the luteal phase, a lot of people feel that they don't recognize those feelings and those thoughts that they were experiencing during the luteal phase. So they can't advocate for themselves as well as they could, because it's hard to recognize who you are in the luteal phase. It's really difficult to be a great advocate for yourself sometimes and express and portray how bad it can get. So I think what I would advise is to refer to our resources. We've got loads of resources on how to speak to a loved one, resources that you can just give to a loved one, and it breaks down what PMDD is. It talks about all the different causes, all the potential signs to look out for if you do have PMDD or if a loved one has PMDD, and ultimately how to support a loved one. And I think just connecting with the PMDD community as well, reaching out to us if anyone needs a conversation. We're always happy to help with the narrative of how to have those kind of conversations. And that doesn't just extend to loved ones, that extends to your managers as well, which I think it's really important to have those conversations. It's difficult, but really important too. And so we're here to support with finding the right way to go about that you're comfortable with, because ultimately it's up to you. However much you want to share, however much you feel able to share, is entirely up to you, and we're just here to guide you in the right direction.
That's really nice. That's really great of you to share that. I'll make sure to link all the resources as well in the article and everywhere where we're sharing this interview. So thanks a lot. Yeah, as a kind of last question, I'm just curious about where you see the future of the PMDD project, because being based in the Netherlands, I can see the need for a charity like that, an organization like that as well over here, because I experienced exactly the same thing as you did. I felt really isolated. I didn't feel like anyone understood what I was going through, and having had bad experiences with healthcare providers as well. So do you see the PMDD project expanding internationally, for example, as well?
I think that would be the dream, definitely. I think because it's a year since we founded, a year this month since we founded, and the further we go on, I think the more we unpack in terms of the issues in the UK healthcare system. So there's a long way for us to go in terms of breaking those issues and trying to tackle the solutions. But definitely, I think PMDD is a worldwide condition. It's a global condition that impacts millions and millions of people. And what works for us will definitely work for other people as well. And hopefully, if we start making some noise in the UK government and healthcare system, then that will hopefully transpire to other areas too. And if we can support worldwide, that would be the absolute dream. Definitely, it's 100% something we've already discussed as a charity, and something that we definitely see happening in the future.
All right. Well, great. Lastly, I think this is not really a question, but I suppose there's a question actually. How can watchers, readers, listeners at Spotlight support you and the PMDD project?
So just continue to raise awareness of PMDD. That always helps. Give us a follow on Instagram. That helps too. And we are funded solely by supporters and donations. So if people are able to support by fundraising or donating to the PMDD project, it would be massively appreciated. And always just giving us continuous feedback as well, reaching out to us. And if anyone has any questions about PMDD, we're always happy to discuss PMDD and learn more. We're always learning. And if maybe someone sees our resources and there's something on our website that is missing, then we're always open to criticism and feedback, additional ways to help people. So yeah, just having that conversation with us would be massively appreciated.
All right, great. That's it from my side. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, just thank you so much for helping to have this kind of conversation and for inviting me onto Spotlight. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. It was a lovely conversation.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.